The first time I encountered Linda in my backyard, she was pruning my rose bushes with a pair of shears I didn't even own. She looked up at me with a smirk, her eyes glinting with a strange mix of confidence and defiance. "You weren't taking care of them properly," she said, as if she had every right to be there. I should have known then that Linda wasn't just an ordinary neighbor. But I was naive. I let it slide, thinking it was just a one-time thing. That was my first mistake. The second time, I found her lounging in my hammock, sipping what I could only assume was my iced tea. "Your backyard has the best shade," she explained, as if that justified her presence. I told her to leave, but she just laughed and took another sip. By the third time, I wasn't even surprised anymore. I stepped outside to find her hosting a book club meeting at my patio table. She waved at me like I was the guest. "Oh, you're home. Want to join us?" she asked, as if I should be grateful for the invitation. That was the moment I realized Linda wasn't just clueless, she was a force of chaos, a suburban menace wrapped in yoga pants and entitlement. I tried reasoning with her. I really did. I told her she wasn't allowed on my property. She countered with, "The HOA doesn't technically own the airspace above your backyard, so I'm not really trespassing." I called the police, but they just gave her a warning. She laughed it off and was back in my yard the next day. Then came the pool incident. It was a warm Saturday afternoon when I found her floating in my pool, a cocktail in hand. "The water's perfect today," she said, closing her eyes. I lost it. I told her to get out. She sighed dramatically. "Legally, you can't kick someone out of water. Water belongs to nature," she said. I stared at her, wondering if I was awake or trapped in the worst fever dream of my life. This was war. I did my research. I looked into electric fences, but that felt extreme. Security cameras? She wouldn't care. A lawsuit? She'd probably countersue me for emotional distress after I denied her access to my koi pond. That's when I found the ad. Need to keep unwanted guests out? Meet Titan, the ultimate guard dog. I clicked the link. Titan was no ordinary dog. Standing at 7 feet tall, he was a mix of wolf, mastiff, and possibly a prehistoric beast. His photos alone made me question if he was real or just a creature summoned from the depths of mythology. The reviews were glowing. "Titan changed my life," one read. "Better than any security system. My ex-husband hasn't been back since." The breeder didn't hesitate when I asked for the price. "Titan doesn't go to just anyone," he said. "He's special." I assured him that I needed special. Titan was delivered the next day. He was massive pure muscle, thick black fur, and eyes that made you question your life choices. But surprisingly, he was calm, even friendly. I spent the day getting to know him, playing fetch, scratching behind his ears. He was perfect. Then Linda showed up. It was like a switch flipped. The second she stepped onto my lawn, Titan's fur bristled, his ears flattened, and a deep, guttural growl rumbled from his chest. Linda stopped mid-step, 1 foot in the air, as Titan locked onto her like she was the final boss in his video game. "Nice doggy," she tried, backing up. Titan let out a bark so loud it rattled my windows. Linda shrieked and bolted down the street. I'd never seen her move so fast. I expected her to come back with some ridiculous legal threat, but she didn't, not at first. Over the next few days, I noticed something weird. Titan didn't just dislike Linda, he despised her. Whenever she was near, even just walking by my house, his entire body tensed, like he was seconds away from tearing through the fence. He didn't react that way to anyone else, just her. Linda, of course, was furious. "You trained that thing to hate me," she accused, standing on the sidewalk like she was protesting a war crime. "This is harassment." "I didn't train Titan to do anything," I said. "Maybe he just has good instincts." She turned red. "I'm calling the HOA." She did. They laughed at her. That's when Linda decided to get creative. First, she tried bribery, tossing a steak over the fence. Titan caught it midair, sniffed it, and then insultingly buried it without taking a single bite. Next, she tried sweet-talking him. "Titan, sweetie, look at you. Such a handsome boy. You don't hate me, do you?" Titan responded by letting out a growl so deep it shook her car. Then came the final act of desperation. She called animal control. The officer arrived, saw Titan sitting peacefully by my side like the world's largest, fluffiest guardian, and asked what the issue was. Linda ranted about how dangerous he was, how he had it out for her. The officer turned to me. Has he attacked anyone? No. Has he left your property? Nope. Then I don't see a problem. Linda screeched. But he hates me. The officer shrugged. Maybe you earned it. I thought that was the end of it. I thought she'd give up. I should have known better. At exactly 2:47 a.m., my security cameras caught Linda climbing over my fence with a ladder. Titan was waiting. The moment her foot touched the ground inside my backyard, Titan moved. It wasn't a bark, not at first, just a slow, deliberate shift. His massive body rose from the shadows like something that had been waiting for this exact moment. His golden eyes locked onto her, unblinking, calculating. Then he let out a low, deep growl, the kind of sound that made your stomach drop before your brain even processed what was happening. Linda froze, one hand still gripping the top of the fence, her eyes darting around like she just realized she had made the worst mistake of her life. The ladder wobbled slightly beneath her weight. Titan took one slow step forward. Nice doggy, Linda whispered. Titan growled louder. I dropped something. She tried, though she wasn't even looking at me. Her eyes were locked onto Titan, who was staring her down with the focus of a predator deciding whether or not to pounce. What exactly did you drop, Linda? I asked, crossing my arms. She didn't answer. Instead, she made a break for it. The moment she moved, Titan lunged not at her, but just close enough to send her scrambling backward. She tripped over her own feet and landed flat on her back with a shriek. Her hands scrambled for something, anything, to use as leverage, but all she found was grass and her own poor life choices. I should have let it play out. I should have let her suffer for just a few more seconds. But I wasn't a monster, so I whistled. Titan stopped instantly, his ears twitching as he looked at me for further instruction. He didn't step away, though. He just loomed over her, waiting. Linda scrambled to her feet, brushing dirt off her ridiculous floral print pajamas. This is harassment, she snapped, still slightly out of breath. You broke into my yard, I reminded her. She pointed a shaky finger at Titan. That thing is psychotic. It wants to kill me. Titan sat, tilted his head slightly, and yawned, like he hadn't just sent a full-grown woman into a panic attack. I shook my head. He hasn't even touched you. Linda looked like she wanted to argue, but she knew there was no case to make. So she did what Linda does best. She stormed off, muttering something about how this wasn't over. I knew she wasn't bluffing. The next day, she started her real war. First, she stood at the edge of my property, arms crossed, glaring at Titan like she could intimidate a 7-foot beast. Titan, in response, merely stared back, unblinking. They stayed like that for a full 5 minutes before she finally huffed and walked away. Then came the food bribes. A raw steak landed in my yard, right in front of Titan. He sniffed it, picked it up, and insultingly dropped it directly into the trash can. The next day, a full rotisserie chicken showed up. Titan buried it. Linda escalated. Bacon, ham, gourmet dog treats. Titan ignored every single one, like they were beneath him. Next, she tried a sweeter approach. She stood by the fence, speaking in a soft, sugary tone. Titan, sweetie, look at you. Such a handsome boy. You don't hate me, do you? Titan didn't blink. He didn't growl. He didn't bark. He just stood there, staring. Linda laughed nervously. Come on, big guy. Let's be friends. Titan let out the deepest, most unsettling growl I had ever heard, and Linda physically recoiled. She muttered something under her breath and stormed off again. It should have been over. Any sane person would have backed off. But Linda wasn't sane. The next night, she called animal control. They showed up at my house, clipboard in hand, with a forced smile that told me they already hated this assignment. We got a report about an aggressive animal, the officer said, glancing warily at Titan, who sat beside me, tail wagging. Let me guess, I said. Linda called you. The officer sighed. She did. Says your dog is a community danger and targets her specifically. I gestured toward Titan. He hasn't left my yard. He hasn't harmed anyone. The most he's done is scare her, which, frankly, she brought on herself. The officer nodded, flipping through his notes. We've already had complaints about her before. Do you mind if I just? He crouched slightly, extending his hand toward Titan. Titan sniffed him, then licked his fingers. The officer grinned. Yeah, this dog isn't the problem. Linda, who had been watching from her driveway, shrieked in outrage. He's a menace. You have to do something. The officer turned to her. Lady, unless you have proof that this dog is attacking people, there's nothing we can do. Maybe stop trespassing on other people's property. Linda opened and closed her mouth like a malfunctioning robot, then stormed inside her house. I thought I had won. I thought she had finally given up. I underestimated how petty she truly was. At exactly 3 o'clock in the morning, Titan perked up. His ears twitched, his posture stiffened. I didn't hear anything at first, but then metal scraping against metal. I checked the cameras. Linda was back. She had a pair of bolt cutters and a determined expression. She was actually trying to break into my yard again. Titan's entire body vibrated with restrained fury as I watched her snip through the first part of my fence lock. I didn't stop him this time. I simply opened the door. Titan moved like a shadow, silent, swift, massive. Linda didn't even notice until he was inches away. Then he let out a single, earth-shaking bark. Linda jumped so violently that she dropped the bolt cutters and fell backward, landing flat on her back for the second time that week. Titan stepped closer. He didn't touch her. He didn't have to. His sheer presence was enough to make her go completely still, staring up at him in pure, unfiltered terror. I stepped outside, arms crossed. You're really committed to this whole breaking and entering thing, huh? Linda actually whimpered. I sighed. You might want to run. Linda didn't need to be told twice. She scrambled to her feet, bolted out of my yard, and sprinted down the street in her pajamas. Titan watched her go, tail wagging slightly, as if he had just played the most entertaining game of his life. I looked down at him. I don't know what she did to you in a past life, but I think you just got your revenge. Titan just yawned, stretched, and trotted back inside, like he hadn't just terrified a full-grown woman into a full-speed retreat. But as I locked my fence again, a thought nagged at me. Why did Titan hate her so much? It wasn't just an ordinary dislike. This was something personal, and I was going to find out exactly why. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Titan wasn't just protective. He despised Linda with a level of intensity that went beyond normal territorial behavior. He had no problem with delivery workers, neighborhood kids, or even the occasional stray cat that wandered too close. But the second Linda appeared, his entire demeanor changed. It was personal. The answer came when I decided to call the breeder. I figured he might have some insight. Maybe Titan had been trained to recognize certain behaviors or sense, something, anything, to explain the obsession he had with making Linda's life miserable. The breeder answered on the first ring. How's Titan doing? He's great, I said, eyeing the giant beast sprawled across my couch. But I have a weird question. He absolutely hates my neighbor. Not in a normal guard dog way, either. He's fixated. It's like he knows her. There was a pause, the kind of pause that makes your stomach twist because it means the other person knows something you don't. What's her name? The breeder finally asked. I hesitated. Linda. Another pause. Then a quiet. You're kidding me. A cold prickle ran down my spine. What? The breeder sighed. I didn't tell you this before because, honestly, I didn't think it mattered. But Titan had a previous owner. My grip on the phone tightened. And she abandoned him? The words sent a rush of heat through my veins. I looked over at Titan, who was chewing idly on a toy, blissfully unaware that his past was finally catching up to him. She dropped him off at a shelter when he was still young. The breeder continued. Said he was too big, too aggressive, and too much work. But the shelter couldn't handle him. He was too smart, too strong, and frankly, too angry. They called me because I specialize in training large breeds. I took him in, and after a while, he calmed down. But the thing is, dogs don't forget. Not really. I let out a slow breath. So you're telling me. The breeder finished for me. Your Linda is the same Linda who abandoned Titan years ago. I looked at Titan again. He must have sensed my stare because he lifted his head, tongue lolling out in a doggy grin that masked the deep, unshakable grudge he'd apparently been carrying all these years. I had unknowingly adopted a dog with a personal vendetta, and Linda had no idea. I barely had time to process the revelation before the final showdown began. That night, I woke up to a noise outside, a rustling sound, followed by a metallic clatter. My stomach sank. I knew exactly what this was. I checked the cameras. Linda was back. This time, she wasn't alone. She had brought someone with hair on, man in his mid-40s, looking just as irritated as she usually did. He held a large metal pole, like he was planning to use it to defend himself. Titan was already at the door, silent but alert. He wasn't barking. He wasn't growling. He was just waiting. Linda gestured wildly toward my fence. "Just cut through it," she hissed at the man. He hesitated. "Are you sure about this? That thing is huge." Linda rolled her eyes. "It's just a dog. He's all bark, no bite. Once we're in, we'll deal with him." Titan exhaled sharply, a low huff of air, like he had just heard the most ridiculous statement of his life. I opened the door. Linda flinched. The man actually took a step back. But Titan didn't move. He just stood there, towering in the moonlight like something conjured from a nightmare. "Breaking and entering, Linda?" I said, crossing my arms. "That's a new low." She scowled. "Your dog is a menace. I have a right to protect myself." I let out a short laugh. "By sneaking into my yard in the middle of the night with bolt cutters?" The man next to her shifted uncomfortably. "Look, lady, I don't think this is worth it." "Shut up, Greg," Linda snapped. Titan took a single step forward, just one. But it was enough. Greg dropped the pole. "Nope. I'm out." He turned on his heel and walked away. Linda gaped at him. "You coward. I paid you." Greg didn't look back. Not enough. That left Linda alone, just her, me, and Titan. Her hands curled into fists. "I'll sue you," she spat. "I'll get your stupid mutt put down." I smiled. "Good luck with that. Because I know who you are now." She stilled. "What? You used to own him," I said. "Didn't you?" Linda's face went pale. "I know you abandoned him," I continued. "I know you dumped him like he was garbage and never looked back." But Titan remembered. Her mouth opened, then closed. She looked at Titan, and for the first time, I saw something other than rage in her expression: fear. Titan didn't move. He just watched her, silent and waiting. I took a step closer. "You can either leave and never come back, or I can call the cops and let them know you've broken into my yard 3 times now. Your choice." Linda's jaw tightened. She wanted to argue. She wanted to fight. But she had finally realized that she had lost. Without another word, she turned and stomped away. Titan watched her go, his tail flicking once. Then he yawned, stretched, and padded back inside, like he had just finished the easiest job of his life. The next morning, I saw a moving truck in Linda's driveway. She was gone by the end of the week. I never saw her again. Titan, on the other hand, became a legend in the neighborhood. People loved him. Kids would stop by to see him, and the mailman even started bringing him treats. He protected the house, but more than that, he became my best friend. One night, as I sat outside with him, watching the stars, I gave him a scratch behind the ears. "You got your revenge, huh?" Titan let out a satisfied huff. I laughed. "Good boy." And with that, the suburban menace was no more, thanks to the guardian of Willow Creek. With Linda gone, life in Willow Creek returned to a peaceful rhythm. Titan became a local celebrity, his imposing figure now a symbol of protection rather than fear. Kids from the neighborhood would gather at my fence, eager to catch a glimpse of the gentle giant who had once sent a grown woman running for her life. Even the mailman, who had initially been wary of Titan, started bringing him treats, earning a wagging tail and a friendly lick in return. But as the days turned into weeks, I couldn't shake the feeling that Titan's story wasn't quite over. There was something about the way he would occasionally stare off into the distance, his ears twitching as if he were listening to something only he could hear. It was as if he were waiting for something or someone. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the yard, I noticed a figure standing at the edge of my property. At first, I thought it was just another curious neighbor, but as I approached, I realized I didn't recognize the man. He was tall, with a weathered face and a thick beard that gave him a rugged appearance. His eyes, however, were what caught my attention. They were sharp, calculating, and fixed directly on Titan. Titan, who had been lounging lazily on the porch, suddenly stood up. His ears flattened, and a low growl rumbled from his chest. It was the same reaction he'd had with Linda, but this time, there was something different, a tension in the air that made my skin crawl. "Can I help you?" I called out, stepping between Titan and the stranger. The man didn't respond immediately. Instead, he took a step closer, his eyes never leaving Titan. "That's a fine dog you've got there," he said finally, his voice rough but calm. What's his name? Titan, I replied, my hand instinctively reaching for Titan's collar. And he's not fond of strangers. The man chuckled, a deep, throaty sound that didn't quite reach his eyes. I can see that. He's got a good memory, doesn't he? I frowned. What do you mean? The man's gaze shifted to me, and for a moment, I felt like he was looking straight through me. I knew his pre-VYS owner, he said slowly. Linda. My heart skipped a beat. Titan's growl grew louder, and I tightened my grip on his collar. Who are you? I demanded. The man took another step forward, and Titan lunged, his bark echoing through the quiet neighborhood. The man stopped, holding up his hands in a gesture of surrender. Easy, big guy. I'm not here to cause trouble. I just wanted to see how he was doing. You knew Linda? I asked, my voice tinged with suspicion. The man nodded. We were acquaintances. Let's just say I had a hand in her decision to leave town. I stared at him, trying to piece together what he was saying. What are you talking about? The man sighed, running a hand through his beard. Linda wasn't just a nuisance. She was dangerous. She had a habit of stirring up trouble wherever she went, and when she abandoned Titan, it wasn't just because he was too much to handle. She was running from something or someone. And that someone is you. I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The man's lips curled into a faint smile. Let's just say I have a vested interest in making sure she stays gone. Titan here did most of the work, but I made sure she didn't come back. I felt a chill run down my spine. Who are you? The man reached into his pocket, and for a moment, I thought he was going to pull out a weapon. Instead, he handed me a business card. Name's Jack. I'm a private investigator. Linda's been on my radar for a while now. She's got a history of causing problems, and I've been hired to make sure she doesn't cause any more. I looked down at the card, my mind racing. So you're saying Titan helped you? Jack chuckled again. You could say that. Dogs have a way of sensing things people can't. Titan knew what she was capable of, and he wasn't about to let her get away with it. I glanced at Titan, who was still growling softly, his eyes locked on Jack. Why are you telling me this? Jack's expression softened, just slightly. Because I think you deserve to know the truth. Titan's not just a guard, Do's a protector. And he chose you for a reason. With that, Jack turned and walked away, disappearing into the shadows as quickly as he had appeared. I stood there for a moment, staring at the spot where he had been, the business card still clutched in my hand. As the weeks turned into months, Titan's presence in the neighborhood became something of a legend. Stories about the giant dog who had driven away the suburban menace spread like wildfire, and soon, people from neighboring towns were coming to catch a glimpse of him. But Titan remained unfazed, his calm demeanor a stark contrast to the tales of his ferocity. One evening, as I sat on the porch with Titan by my side, I found myself thinking about Jack's words. Titan had chosen me, not just as his owner, but as his partner in protecting the neighborhood. And in doing so, he had given me a sense of purpose I hadn't realized I was missing. As the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, I reached down and scratched Titan behind the ears. You're more than just a dog, aren't you? I said softly. Titan let out a contented sigh, his tail thumping against the porch. In that moment, I knew that our journey together was far from over. Titan wasn't just my guardian, was my family. And together, we would face whatever challenges lay ahead. Years passed, and Titan's legend only grew. He became a symbol of protection and loyalty, a reminder that even in the quietest of neighborhoods, there are battles to be fought and victories to be won. And though Linda was long gone, her memory lingered as a cautionary tale, a reminder that some people are best left in the past. As for me, I found a new sense of purpose in caring for Titan and the neighborhood he had sworn to protect. Together, we became the guardians of Willow Creek, a team united by trust, loyalty, and an unshakable bond. And as I watched Titan chase after a ball in the backyard, his massive frame moving with surprising grace, I couldn't help but smile. He was more than just a doe, was a hero. And I was lucky to have him by my side. If you were the one in this story, how would you react? Would you stand up and fight back, or accept the unreasonable pressure and control from the HOA? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this video with more people. Your small action gives us the motivation to keep bringing you more intense and engaging stories. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.